I'm Helen. I'm 54 years of age, and when I was 21, I was diagnosed with asthma. Asthma's in the family, and my granny died as a result of an asthma attack. I suppose what the main thing for me has been is that my asthma is pretty stubborn, and therefore I'm told I've brittle asthma. When I first heard about COVID, I thought it was in a country so far away from us that it would never come to Northern Ireland, though I was worried that with an underlying health condition that if I got COVID, I was in trouble. It was really about 5 days after that where I started to feel a bit unwell, and by the 23rd of March, I was feeling pretty rough, and I developed a cough which my husband hadn't developed, and the cough was like something I've never experienced. It wasn't my asthma cough, it wasn't a chesty cough, it was like a choking cough, as if you'd swallowed something and it had gone down the wrong way, and this would go on and on and on without respite. I didn't want to go to hospital because I was petrified of what would happen. And unfortunately for me, that wasn't to be. And the next day, my SATs dropped to 92. And at that point, it was decided that I would have to go to hospital. And that really is when the horror of COVID really set in. I said goodbye to my husband. I didn't know if that was the last time I would see him. Was trying to be quite upbeat. But also I realised that underneath it all, I was praying desperately, oh Lord, don't let this be COVID, please let me be okay. So eventually the test came back to say that I was positive, and therefore in the middle of the night I was moved out into a ward with 3 other ladies, and the sounds in that ward were just horrendous. We all were coughing, nobody was talking, nobody could talk. And it was a very lonely place to be. It was frightening. I was really petrified because I didn't know what this would mean for me or for any of the other ladies. I was the youngest initially on the ward, and it was awful to watch a few patients leave the ward to go to intensive care. And I just wondered, would I be next? I was moved then onto a ward, a mixed ward, and what was really frightening in that was that there was a younger man brought in next to me, a man who I wouldn't have said looked unhealthy, but I remember the doctor having a conversation with him saying that he wasn't a candidate for ICU and that he needed to start being prepared for end of life. And he was distraught. I was lying behind a curtain thinking I shouldn't be hearing this, but the doctor's coming my way. Are they coming to tell me the same? And it's such a lonely experience that you're lying there desperately clinging to life, hoping that you're hearing the right message from the doctor and that you're not going to be told the same thing. When the doctor came to me, she said that my lungs were pretty messy at that point, and I was told I was being moved across to the Nightingale Hospital. And I thought that really said to me that I was going downhill. And when I texted my sister, who was working in the Nightingale Hospital, it's interesting that she was saying the same to my nephews, that this isn't a good sign. And I was really worried about what would come next. On that Thursday night, it was the first night of Clap for Carers. And in Belfast, I could hear the church bells ringing, the Harland and Wolff, big yellow cranes, blasting horns. I could hear people shouting and clapping, and it was so emotional. And we were all in tears in the ward, thinking that they were clapping and cheering for the people who were doing everything to help us. When I was moved across to the Nightingale Hospital, I felt like a prisoner. Not that I've ever been a prisoner, so I'm not really sure what that feels like, but I was escorted out. I was escorted into the ambulance. I wasn't allowed to touch anything. It was a very difficult journey because I was not sure what to expect when I got to the other side. And when I did get there, My sister was waiting for me along with a number of security guards, and seeing my sister Jennifer in her PPE, thinking this is the last person in my family I'm going to see, I was howling. I think that's the only word I can use to describe it, as was Jennifer and as was one of the security guards. And when I got up onto the ward, I think the staff were really panicked about the state I was in, but it was all emotional trauma really, because I had just seen my sister and I thought that would be the last time I'd see her. Thankfully, I did recover from COVID, and I was in a ward that I saw others steadily getting better, and I was very thankful that I did not need to go into intensive care, and that I was able to get out of hospital. And when I got out, it was quite a strange journey home because there was no traffic on the roads. We'd all gone into lockdown at this point, and the conversation with my husband was quite stilted because I didn't really know how I felt to be out. I was still frightened. I didn't know if I was now on the road to recovery or if I would take a relapse. And when I spoke to my doctor the next day, my GP was so keen to know what it was like, because they really had no idea of what it was like for a patient in the hospital, going through the different phases of COVID, because I was the first patient in the practice that had developed COVID. For the next 6 weeks, really, I was left to my own devices. There was no follow-up, there was no contact from the hospital. I relied on my GP, and I also relied on Twitter, and I got involved in Twitter and looking for other people going through similar experiences. And it was that helped me to come to terms with what I'd been through. And it's how I got in contact with the European Lung Foundation. One of the things that nobody really explained, and perhaps nobody really understood, was the aftermath of COVID. We had been told early on that COVID was something that was a flu-like illness and that you'd recover quickly. That certainly wasn't my experience. And many others started to talk on Twitter about these symptoms which were ongoing. One of the things that caused me so much trouble was my heart rate would just spike up to 190 beats a minute, just sitting, doing absolutely nothing. I found exercise really challenging. I would get breathless, I would be fatigued, I had brain fog, I couldn't remember names. It was the most bizarre experience, and still continues in some ways to impact on me. Thankfully, almost a year on, I'm much better. I have been through the most traumatic experience of my life, and one I never want to repeat. But someone with an underlying health condition certainly can come out the other side, and I'm very grateful to all of the staff and all of those people who prayed for me, who supported me, who helped me in the hospital, and who looked after me when I came out and got me to the point I'm at today. I've now had my first vaccine and I feel protected in many ways, and I look forward to the second one. I'm much more positive about what lies ahead now, and I feel that hopefully I can put COVID behind me once and for all, and that my asthma will remain settled, and that hopefully with protection that the vaccine gives, life can get back to some kind of normality pretty soon.